Hi students, welcome to session 8 of electrochemistry, in which we will be learning electrolytic cell and the process of electrolysis in detail, which is the third part of this chapter. Second two parts we learned are galvanic cells, concept of electrolytic conductance. Now we are moving on to electrolysis or electrolytic cell. Last part will be applications, batteries and corrosion. Okay. Now, what is an electrolytic cell? Already in introduction, elaborately I have explained you the device in which a non-spontaneous redox reaction is conducted by passing electricity. That means here electrical energy is used, chemical energy is produced. Whereas in galvanic cell, chemical energy, that is reaction, was performing itself to liberate the electrical energy. So there electrical energy is produced, chemical energy is used. Here it is the reverse. Now let us understand the basic design of electrolytic cell, how it looks like and what is process of electrolysis and how it occurs. Okay. See, there will be a tank or vessel made of a non-conducting material like wood or glass or fiber or anything, non-conducting material in which an electrolyte is filled. Now, what are electrolytes? Any substance that conducts electricity due to presence of free ions, allows the passage of electricity through it and undergoes decomposition due to passage of electricity is called electrolyte. Which substances act as electrolytes? Acids, bases, salts. Bases and salts being ionic substances either in molten state or in aqueous solution state, whereas acids being covalent substances only in their aqueous solution state. Yes or no? Any such electrolyte, molten or aqueous state, any such electrolyte is filled in this electrolytic tank. Then two metallic plates are graphite rods. Two metallic plates or graphite rods are placed into it. These metallic plates or graphite rods are in turn connected to a battery. Connected to a battery. That's all, so simple. Now, you know this is the positive terminal of the battery. You know this is the positive terminal of the battery and this is the negative terminal of the battery. The electrode that, let me label one by one. The vessel in which all the contents are placed is called electrolytic tank. The molten or aqueous solution of a substance which contains free ions and allows the passage of electricity and undergoes decomposition, that is undergoes electrolysis, is called electrolyte. Out of the two metallic plates which are commonly called as electrodes, the electrode connected to negative terminal of the battery is called cathode. The electrode connected to positive terminal of the battery is called anode. And this is of course battery. This is the simple setup of an electrolytic cell. Industries, this is simple laboratory setup. In industries, when electrolysis has to be performed in huge scale, some complex setup would be there, which you would be learning or you might have learnt already in first year when you learnt Kastner-Kellner cell. You might learn a little in metallurgy chapter this year also. Okay, but otherwise this is the simple setup of electrolytic cell. Now, how does exactly electrolysis process occur? How do you explain each of these components? I think battery, nothing to understand, it is a series of galvanic cells. Battery is a series of galvanic cells. And then electrolytic tank is a vessel made of non-conducting material, I have told you already. Electrolyte, we know acid, base or salt, whether it's molten state or aqueous solution. Now only thing you need to understand clearly is about electrodes. One is cathode attached to negative terminal of the battery. The other one is anode attached to positive terminal of the battery. Now the question is, electrons have to be, convention for the reactions is fixed. I have already told you. Anode oxidation, cathode reduction, no change in that. Now, for reduction to occur, electrons have to be supplied to the electrolyte. When oxidation occurs, electrolyte only loses the electrons, so gives the electrons. Now, at cathode, what is happening? Reduction is happening. For reduction to happen, through cathode, electrons have to enter into the solution, so that the cations present in the solution, let me call them AX plus. The cations present in the solution can gain those electrons and become neutral. Okay? Similarly, now say there is an anion, say Bx minus, By minus, for example. Now at anode what happens? Oxidation happens. When oxidation happens, electrons are lost. So the anion is losing the electron and becoming neutral, and those electrons are traveling in through anode through the circuit. That means, please understand, cathode is the negatively charged electrode through which electrons enter into the electrolyte. Anode is the positively charged electrode through which electrons leave the electrolyte. Of course, cathode is the negatively charged electrode at which reduction occurs, and for reduction to occur, electrons enter into the electrolyte through cathode. At anode, anode is the electrode which is connected to positive terminal of the battery. So anode is the positive electrode at which oxidation occurs. Because oxidation occurs and electrons are produced, electrons leave the electrolyte through anode. Now, as I was discussing previously, here the charges decide what reaction to happen. Means battery is supplying the electricity. Now, because cathode is connected to negative terminal of the battery, electrons are entering into the electrolyte at cathode and helping the reduction to happen. Whereas, since anode is connected to positive terminal of the battery, those electrons which are produced at anode are being attracted by anode, and it is leaving, the electrons are leaving the electrolyte. So, because it is connected to positive terminal, is anode is positive here. Because it is connected to negative terminal, cathode is negative here, and charges are deciding the reactions. Because it is connected to negative terminal, electrons are supplied by this electrode. Because electrons are supplied by this electrode, reduction occurs at this electrode, because for reduction you need electrons. Because it is connected to positive terminal, electrons are leaving through this electrode, and for electrons to escape from this electrode, the electrolyte has to lose electrons here. That's how the charge decides the reaction here. Whereas in electrochemical cell or galvanic cell, reactions decide the charge. Because oxidation occurs at anode and oxidation is rich in electrons, electrons being produced there, anode is negative there. Because electrons are consumed due to reaction there, cathode is positive there. So their reaction decides the charge of the electrode. Here, charges decide the reaction at the electrode. That's why the signs of the electrodes there and here are opposite to each other, but the processes happening are same. Understood? Now, the process that occurs in an electrolytic cell is called electrolysis. Lysis literally means decomposition. Thermolysis, decomposition using heat. Photolysis, decomposition using light. Electrolysis, decomposition using electricity. What are we achieving here? Let us take two popular examples. One is acidylated water. I am passing electricity. You are getting hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Second one is sodium chloride, aqueous or molten state. Sodium chloride, liquid state or molten state, performing electrolysis, it becomes metallic sodium and chlorine gas. Now what is happening? A compound decomposing, breaking itself into its constituent elements. A compound decomposing and breaking itself into its constituent elements. Now understand the basic idea of electrolysis. Very simple. Here it is cation, right? This is anion, right? Whereas this is a white crystalline substance which we use every day in our dishes for taste. In all our curries, in all our dishes for taste. Consumable white crystalline substance called sodium chloride. That is breaking down itself and decomposing and transforming chemically itself into a greyish white soft solid called sodium metal, which is highly reactive to be carefully stored in kerosene or glycerin. And if you take a piece of it and put into your mouth may burn because it reacts explosively with water. So, then other substance, a colorless pungent smelling gas, strong smelling gas, which is used in bleaching, and too much of inhalation of this may be lethal also. Slight inhalation fine, too much inhalation may be lethal also. Means a white crystalline substance changing into a greyish white soft solid called sodium metal and a pungent smelling gas called chlorine. So, for this to transform into this, here sodium and chlorine are in their ionic state, whereas sodium and chlorine here are in their atomic state. Means charged species have to become neutral. Charged species have to become neutral. What charge is this? Cation. For cation to become neutral, it has to gain electrons. Positive charge should become 0, means negative charge should be added, which is nothing but electrons. And gain of electrons is called reduction. So, cathode is the place where cations gain electrons and become neutral and will be deposited or liberated as the relevant element. Similarly, this is negatively charged. To become neutral means it has to lose negative charge. Losing negative charge means losing electrons. And what do you call loss of electrons? Oxidation. So anions at anode undergo oxidation, lose electrons and become neutral. So a cation became neutral by gaining electrons at cathode. An anion became neutral by losing electrons at anode. This process is simply called discharge of ions. What do you call it? Discharge of ions. Ions losing their charge and becoming neutral so that a compound can transform into its constituent elements. A compound can decompose into its constituent elements. So, what exactly happens in electrolysis is simply discharge of ions. So, as I was mentioning, if the electrolyte is AXBY, already it would be existing as free ions in the solution. So X moles of AY plus Y moles of BX minus, let us take. Okay, this is electrolyte. Now at cathode what happens? The AY plus takes Y electrons and becomes A. Then at anode what happens? BX minus loses X electrons and becomes B. Of course, X moles of AY plus and Y moles of BX minus. I am not exactly worrying about the balancing right now. So that means through reduction, cation became neutral. Through oxidation, anion became neutral. Through discharge of ions, a compound became its constituent elements. So if you take the net reaction, what happens? You will be getting AXBY becoming X moles of neutral A plus Y moles of neutral B. Means compound containing charged species had transformed into two elements containing chargeless species called atoms. So ions have become atoms. Eventually, at microscopic level if you speak, at macroscopic level compound has become elements. Clear? That is electrolysis, electrolytic cell, the very fundamental. Then what decides the products of electrolysis? Factors affecting products of electrolysis. Means please understand, every time what you are seeing in the formula, only those elements may not be produced. Situations differ. Why and how? Let us understand. See, the first factor that decides is the state of electrolyte. as I was already mentioning during concept of electrolytic conductance, you may either take molten state or you may take aqueous solution. Molten state means you have to maintain the temperature of the electrolytic tank above its melting point because you have to keep it melted. But you are getting the substance in its pure form. Say sodium chloride, molten sodium chloride, pure molten sodium chloride. You don't have anything else in that. Pure magnesium chloride, you don't have anything else in that. Whereas, if you want to perform the electrolysis at room temperature or you are dissolving that salt into water and preparing an aqueous solution, then please understand at electrodes when the reactions are happening, along with cation of the solute, the water molecules of the solvent also will come for reduction. Along with the anion of the solute, the water molecules of the solvent also come for oxidation. So there is competition. There is competition. Now, based on who undergoes reduction, the product at cathode and product at anode will be decided. That's why please understand, whatever the composition you are seeing in the compound, same elements will be produced if it is molten state. Whereas if it is aqueous solution, instead of the expected element, you may get hydrogen gas at cathode. Instead of expected element, you may get oxygen gas at anode because water will be competing for reduction or oxidation. That is our second point. Now, as I told, two species are competing with each other for reduction or oxidation, I said, right? Then who is going to win? That is decided by preferential discharge theory. Preferential discharge theory, which depends on the electrode potential values. What does preferential discharge theory say? Say there are two species competing at cathode. Both are capable of undergoing reduction. Then which one will undergo, which one will not? Answer is, at cathode what process has to occur? Reduction. For reduction to occur more readily, the electrode potential must be more or less. You know, by convention, electrode potential means reduction potential. That's why electrode potential must be more. So out of the 2 or 3 or 4 species competing at cathode, any number competing at cathode, the one with highest potential will preferably undergo reduction. Now coming to anode, oxidation, reverse. For a process to more readily undergo oxidation, its electrode potential must be lesser. So out of 2 or 3 or 4 species competing to undergo oxidation at anode, the one with lowest electrode potential, here by convention electrode potential means reduction potential, that we have understood. So the species with lowest electrode potential will undergo oxidation at anode. The species with highest electrode potential will undergo reduction at cathode. That is called preferential discharge theory. Third parameter is overvoltage. This is rare case, not every time. We have 1 or 2 examples based on this. Overvoltage means sometimes certain species, whether undergoing reduction or undergoing oxidation, may be kinetically slow for the process to occur. When they are kinetically slow, they would need extra voltage. That's why, as per the preferential discharge theory, whatever you account, that may not happen. Means the one having lower potential may not undergo oxidation at anode. The one having higher potential may not undergo reduction at cathode. It might reverse because of the extra voltage required because the species may be kinetically slow. We will get one example, don't worry. That phenomenon is called overvoltage. Due to overvoltage also, the products will be decided. Then, last but equally important is the nature of electrode. See, as long as you are taking inert electrodes like platinum, etc., commonly platinum. If you wanted an inert electrode, it is platinum. If you take inert electrode like platinum, it will just remain a spectator, it will just remain a charged plate, it will not interfere with the cell reactions. Whereas if you take any reactive electrodes like copper, to some extent silver, if it is more reactive than the element present in the solution, it may react. So if you take reactive electrodes, even electrode will be coming and interfering with the reactions. That case, an unexpected product might come, though you have different kinds of species in your solution. So please understand, nature of electrodes, whether it is inert or reactive, will decide what kind of product should be formed during electrolysis. So quickly, whether the electrolyte is molten or aqueous solution will decide the products, number one. Number two, when there is competition at the electrodes for more than one species to undergo reduction or oxidation. At cathode, the one with highest potential will win. At anode, the one with lowest potential will win for reduction and oxidation respectively. Number three, certain cases when the process is kinetically slow, it demands extra voltage, so a product not expected from preferential discharge theory may be formed. Number four, it depends on the nature of electrodes, whether you have taken reactive electrode or inert electrode. Okay, now through a set of examples describing in detail the electrolysis process, we will understand each of these factors, how they affect the products of electrolysis. Okay. Now let us understand product formation during electrolysis by taking different examples. Let me start off with the simplest example available called molten sodium chloride. So when I say molten sodium chloride, you have got only sodium chloride in the composition, only sodium cations, chloride anions, no other species mixed. Now, electrolyte would have ionized as, or it exists as, free ions, sodium cation and chloride anion in the liquid state or molten state. Now, at cathode what happens? Sodium cation would like to gain an electron and become neutral sodium. Now, large number of sodium cations transforming into large number of sodium atoms. Say for example, some 23 grams of sodium is produced, which is 1 mole of sodium. Sodium being a solid comes and deposits on the surface of the cathode. So please understand, whenever solid substances are formed as a result of electrode reaction, you say the substance is deposited at that electrode. Whenever gaseous substances are formed during an electrode reaction, you say that substance is liberated at that electrode. Whenever any liquid substance is formed, we simply say it is formed at that electrode. So deposited or liberated or formed. So at cathode what is happening? Sodium cation gaining electrons supplied from the battery and becoming sodium metal, solid sodium metal, and sodium gets deposited on the surface of cathode, for which you know electrode potential from electrochemical series, you can get it minus 2.71 volts. Now at anode what happens? The chloride ions lose electrons. I can say 2 chloride ions lose electrons, 2 electrons, and become chlorine gas. So at anode what happens? Chlorine gas is liberated. And the electrode potential, this is an oxidation reaction, but we are writing reduction potential only. The electrode potential for this process is plus 1.36 volts. You can confirm from the electrochemical series. Okay. Now, the net cell reaction. To get the net cell reaction, please understand, here there is 1 electron in reduction, but there are 2 electrons in oxidation. So you will have to multiply the whole reduction equation by 2. But electrode potential is an intensive property, so it does not change accordingly. Okay, it is minus 2.71 volts. Now what happens? 2 moles of sodium cations, 2 moles of chloride anions gives rise to 2 moles of sodium solid plus a mole of chlorine gas. Now I can write 2 moles of sodium cations, 2 moles of chloride ions together as 2 NaCl, which was in liquid state. Upon electrolysis decomposed into 2 moles of grayish white soft metal called sodium plus a mole of pungent smelling gas called chlorine, and you got a balanced reaction. Now you want cell potential of this, standard cell potential of this reaction, this net cell reaction. Now what is standard cell potential? E naught cathode minus E naught anode. Let me write from this end. So you know that E naught cell is nothing but E naught cathode minus E naught anode. Now you observe. Which is cathodic reaction here? Sodium, reduction of sodium. The electrode potential is minus 2.71. Which is anodic reaction here? Chloride ion. And that is 1.36. Reduction potential only. So minus of plus will be minus 1.36. You add that. 6 plus 1, 7. 7 plus 3, 10. 2 plus 2, 4. So minus 4.07 volts. By the way, why are we getting the cell potential negative? It is obvious because we have to perform reaction by passing electricity here. So we are giving voltage here. It is a non-spontaneous reaction. When the cell reaction is non-spontaneous, cell potential is supposed to be negative. We discussed many times. So cell potential negative, what does it mean? For this process to occur, we have to supply an voltage of 4.07 volts. Their reaction gives us the voltage. Here we are giving voltage to perform the reaction. And how much voltage do we have to supply? 4.07 volts. Under standard conditions we are talking about. Non-standard conditions it differs. On the concentration and other factors, you know all those things. Okay. So this is how electrolysis can be understood. Now, what factor decided the products here? The only factor is state of the electrolyte. It was molten state. No other species were coming and competing with the electrode reactions. Only one species for reduction at cathode. Only one species for oxidation at anode. Process was simple to understand. Let us move on to aqueous sodium chloride, which becomes slightly complicated to understand. Because there is water, sodium chloride both trying to undergo electrolysis there. Okay, let us look into it. So let's move on to aqueous solution of sodium chloride, which in industries is generally called brine solution. Okay, see, as usual at electrolyte, aqueous sodium chloride solution would have contained aqueous sodium cation and aqueous chloride anion. Now, observe carefully please. At cathode what happens? Aqueous sodium cation wants to gain an electron and get deposited as solid sodium metal, right? For which the potential is minus 2.71 volts, which we just understood. But there is somebody hidden here who is also trying to undergo reduction. Who is that? Water molecules. Few students or few books have a fallacy that they use H plus ions. Water doesn't ionize into H plus and OH minus. Water undergoes ionization very, very weakly, you know that. That's why it is the water molecules which undergo reduction, not H plus ions from water. So for the reduction of water molecules, how can it be explained? Please understand. In water, the species with positive oxidation state is hydrogen. The species with negative oxidation state is oxygen. Which oxidation state can undergo reduction? Positive state or negative state? Positive state wants to gain electrons to become neutral, whereas negative state wants to lose electrons. So positive state, that is hydrogen with its positive state, undergoes reduction and produces hydrogen gas. Undergoes reduction and produces hydrogen gas. Then the byproducts of the process are going to be OH minus ions. Let us balance it. 2 hydrogens here, but 2 plus 1, 3 hydrogens here. So let us put 2 here, then 2 moles of water. Balanced, right? Now what about number of electrons? First understand, when water undergoes reduction, the product of reduction of water is hydrogen gas and the byproduct is hydroxyl ions. That is clear, right? Now let us understand how many electrons are involved. Observe. Out of 4 hydrogens with plus 1 oxidation state here in 2 moles of water, only 2 have become 0. Remaining 2 in OH minus are still remaining as plus 1 only. The oxidation state of hydrogen in hydroxyl ion is plus 1. The oxidation state of hydrogen has changed from plus 1 to 0 only in case of formation of hydrogen. That means 2H plus, it's like 2H plus have become H2. That means how many electrons do you need for reduction? 2 electrons. And go to your electrochemical series and observe. There will be one electrode reaction where H plus gains electrons and becomes H2. There the potential would have been 0. But below that there will be another electrode reaction where water gains electrons and becomes hydrogen gas, for which the electrode potential is minus 0.41 volts. So for reduction of water, the electrode potential is minus 0.41 volts. Now comes the question. At cathode, both sodium cation and water are there for undergoing reduction. Then who undergoes reduction, who does not? Answer is preferential discharge theory, which I just explained. At cathode, the species with highest potential undergoes reduction, because to undergo reduction, electrode potential must be greater. Out of the two values, minus 2.71 and minus 0.41, which is the larger value? You are right, minus 0.41. That's why water undergoes reduction and hydrogen gas is liberated. Sodium cations do not undergo reduction, so sodium metal is not deposited. That means, please understand, sodium cations are remaining as sodium cations only in the solution. They are not undergoing any transformation. Is that fine? Good. Coming to anode. See here, one side chloride ions are trying to lose 2 electrons and form or liberate chlorine gas at anode, for which the electrode potential is 1.36 volts, which we just discussed. On the other hand, water is trying to undergo oxidation. Now, when water undergoes oxidation, how would the reaction look like? As I told you, the species with negative oxidation state can lose electrons and undergo oxidation. Which species has negative oxidation state here? Oxygen. That's why from its minus 2 state, oxygen enters into 0 oxidation state and becomes O2. So in this case, the byproduct will be H plus ion. So please understand, if water undergoes reduction, hydrogen changes from plus 1 state to 0 state and hydrogen gas is liberated, byproduct will be hydroxyl ions. If water undergoes oxidation, oxygen part of it changes from negative oxidation state minus 2 state to 0 state to form oxygen gas, liberate oxygen gas, and byproduct will be H plus ion. Now let us balance it and understand how many electrons are involved. See here, there are 2 oxygens here, so I'll have to put 2 here. Then I got 4 hydrogens, so I should put 4 H plus. Now how many electrons are lost? Observe. Each oxygen is in its minus 2 state in water, and it is changing to 0 state. Means each oxygen should lose 2 electrons. But how many oxygens are involved to become O2? 2 oxygens. Each 2 electrons into 2, that will be how many? 4 electrons. So, loss of 4 electrons. Now, how do I get electrode potential value for this reaction? Go to your electrochemical series. And the list of reactions given in your electrochemical series will be completely reduction reactions. But this is an oxidation reaction. So, reverse it and see. In your electrochemical series, you will notice O2 plus 4H plus 4 electrons giving rise to 2H2. That is the electrode reaction for which we have to check the potential. And you will notice the potential as 1.23 volts. You can go back and cross check. How many volts? 1.23 volts. Now comes the question, out of chloride ion and water, which should undergo oxidation preferably? The answer is simple. According to preferential discharge theory, the one with the lowest potential undergoes oxidation at anode. That way, if you see, water should undergo oxidation and chloride ions should remain chloride ions, and the product should be oxygen gas liberated at anode. But in this case, please understand, water suffers over voltage. Water suffers over voltage. Because of over voltage, the process of oxidation of water is kinetically slow compared to oxidation of chloride ions. So, preferential discharge theory doesn't work here. Though, according to preferential discharge theory, having lower potential, water had to undergo oxidation. Instead, chloride ions undergo oxidation. So, this happens, this does not happen. Means, please understand. Sodium cations are remaining sodium cations, whereas water is undergoing reduction to produce hydrogen gas at cathode. So, the product at cathode is hydrogen gas. Chloride ions are undergoing oxidation to liberate chlorine gas, whereas water cannot undergo oxidation here. So, the product at cathode is hydrogen gas, the product at anode is chlorine gas. Oxygen is not produced here. Having understood that, this is your cathodic reaction, this is your anodic reaction. You have to add both to get the net cell reaction. Now, to get the net cell reaction, when you have to add these two, luckily both involve 2 electrons only. That's why there is no need to multiply any equation, directly add them. 2H2O plus 2Cl minus, 2H2O plus 2Cl minus, giving rise to H2 gas plus Cl2 gas plus 2OH minus, plus 2OH minus. Now, the cell potential E naught cell will be E naught cathode minus E naught anode, right? So, minus 0.41, minus of plus remains minus 1.36. Add the value. 6 plus 1, 7, 4 plus 3, 7, 0 plus 1, 1, minus 1.777 volts. So, for this process to occur, we need to supply a voltage of 1.77 volts. E naught cell has to come negative. Clear? So, that is how aqueous electrolysis of aqueous sodium chloride can be understood. Now, what factors decided the product formation here? One was the physical state of the substance. Because it is aqueous, water came for competition. Second factor was the preferential discharge theory, especially at cathode. So, electrode potential value came into picture when we had to decide the product formation. 3. We tried to compare electrode potential values, but it was reverse at anode because of the third factor called over voltage. So, 3 factors together decide the product formation here, that at cathode hydrogen should be produced, at anode chlorine gas should be liberated. Clear? One last point, interesting point to be noted here is, in products you have OH minus ions. At the same time, the Na plus ions remain unused. Now, the remaining Na plus ions and OH minus ions in the aqueous solution are forming aqueous sodium hydroxide for you. Now that aqueous sodium hydroxide can be separated and the water can be evaporated and sodium hydroxide can be crystallized and can be marketed. That means electrolysis of aqueous sodium chloride gives you a byproduct called sodium hydroxide. And by the way, for the industry trying to produce sodium hydroxide, that is the main product. Hydrogen gas and oxygen gas, chlorine gas are just formed as a process of electrolysis. So please understand, for the manufacture of sodium hydroxide, electrolysis of brine solution is performed. Okay, the unused sodium cations and hydroxyl anions formed due to reduction of water, both of them together form sodium hydroxide. Okay, that is electrolysis of aqueous sodium chloride. Now let us move on to electrolysis of aqueous sulfuric acid solution. Sulfuric acid dissolved into water forming a dilute solution. How does it undergo electrolysis? Okay. Now as you can clearly see here, at electrolyte, sulfuric acid undergoes ionization to form H plus ions and sulfate ions. Now you know very well, as soon as the charges are passed, cations migrate to cathode and undergo reduction there, anion migrate to anode and undergo oxidation there. That is the process. Now, At cathode, cation 2H plus would have migrated. It can gain 2 electrons and try to liberate H2 gas, for which you know very well the electrode potential is 0 volts. But please understand, not only H plus ions from the sulfuric acid, but also water molecules present in the aqueous solution are trying to undergo reduction here. And just now we understood the reduction process of water. H2O plus 2 electrons gives rise to H2 plus 2OH minus, for which electrode potential is minus 0.41 volts. See, in both cases the product is hydrogen gas, liberation of hydrogen gas only. Then why are we trying to differentiate it? If it is reduction of water, there is a byproduct hydroxyl ion. So we have to be careful. Now, apply preferential discharge theory. This reaction has an voltage of 0 volts. This reaction has an voltage of minus 0.41 volts. And you know very well, the one with highest potential undergoes reduction at cathode. 0 is larger or minus 0.41 volts is larger. So this reaction occurs, this does not. Means H2 gas and OH minus are not produced, only H2 gas is liberated. Moving to anode. At anode, anions would have migrated to anode, and sulfate ions, when they are undergoing oxidation, they liberate peroxysulfate. Means sulfate transforms into peroxysulfate, whose formula is S2OA2 minus. To balance the atoms, I will have to put 2 here. Now let us check the electrons involved in oxidation. See here. Sulfate, oxidation state of oxygen in its combined state is minus 2. Minus 2 into 4 is minus 8. And in the charge you have 2 minus, so that will be plus 2. Minus 8 plus 2 will be minus 6. To neutralize sulfur should have plus 6. So oxidation state of sulfur in sulfate ion is plus 6. Now come here. 8 into minus 2 will be minus 16. Minus 16 plus 2 will be minus 14. To neutralize, the 2 sulfur should have plus 14, means each sulfur should have plus 7. So from plus 6 state, the sulfur is changing to plus 7 state. That means oxidation number is increasing by 1 unit. Now each sulfur increases by 1 unit, 2 sulfur, so by 2 units. So it is 2 electrons involved. Now E0 value for this is found to be 2.01 volts. Now you have water competing for oxidation here, and I have already explained you the reaction of water undergoing oxidation. 2 moles of water liberates oxygen gas and forms H plus ions as the byproduct with the loss of 4 electrons, and E0 value in this case is 1.23 volts, as I have already explained you. Now apply preferential discharge theory here. At anode, the species with lowest potential undergoes oxidation. Out of the 2 values, lower potential is water. So water undergoes oxidation. Oxygen gas is liberated. Peroxysulfate ions are not produced, and sulfate ions are remaining sulfate ions only. They are unused, not consumed. Clear? Now you see, this is the cathodic reaction, this is the anodic reaction. To get the net cell reaction, you need to add these two. Okay. Now you notice, in oxidation you have 4 electrons, in reduction you have 2 electrons. So reduction reaction needs to be multiplied by 2 before adding. Now multiply and do it. Then you get 4H plus 2H2O giving rise to 2H2 plus O2 gases, of course, plus 4H plus here. Now you know 4H plus gets cancelled. So the net cell reaction you are left with is 2H2O giving rise to 2H2 plus O2. What is that, by the way? It is the electrolysis of water. What did I take? Aqueous sulfuric acid. But who is undergoing electrolysis indirectly? Water is undergoing electrolysis. Why is this happening? It is due to the relative voltages. Now, I'll take you back to school. Maybe in 7th or 8th class, you must have studied electrolysis of acidulated water. Remember? Electrolysis of acidulated water, you must have studied that water produces hydrogen gas at cathode, oxygen gas at anode during electrolysis. Now, aqueous solution of sulfuric acid is nothing but acidulated water. So, indirectly, this is nothing but electrolysis of acidulated water. Is that clear? Now, net E naught cell let us calculate. See, for cathodic reaction, the voltage is 0. For the anodic reaction, voltage is 1.23. So, E naught cathode minus E naught anode. So, 1.23 volts. So, for the electrolysis of aqueous sulfuric acid, or indirectly I can say acidulated water, the voltage required is 1.23 volts. Is that clear? Now, what factors decide the electrolysis here? It is the state of the electrolyte, number 1. Number 2, it is the voltages. That is, it is the electrode potential values, preferential discharge theory, that has decided electrode reactions in both cathode and anode. That is electrolysis of aqueous sulfuric acid. Okay. Let us move on to the next one under product formation during electrolysis. That is aqueous copper sulfate. You have got two things to discuss here. Electrolysis of aqueous copper sulfate using inert platinum electrodes, or electrolysis of aqueous copper sulfate using reactive copper electrodes only. In both cases, electrolytic reaction is same. Aqueous copper sulfate would have produced cupric ions and sulfate ions. That does not change. What changes is the nature of reactions at cathode and anode and the net cell reaction. I'll give you comparative study to make learning easy. So, cations would have migrated to cathode. Which is the cation here? Copper. Copper cation migrates to cathode, gains 2 electrons, becomes solid copper, for which the popular value of electrode potential is 0.34 volts. Now, because it is aqueous solution, who is competing there? Water is competing there. So, at anode, along with copper cations, water is trying to gain 2 electrons, liberate hydrogen gas and form hydroxyl ions as the byproduct, and for this E naught value is minus 0.41 volts. Now tell me, according to preferential discharge theory, at cathode, the one with highest electrode potential must undergo reduction. 0.34 minus 0.41, which is larger? 0.34. So this does not occur, this occurs. Now, whether I use inert platinum electrodes or I use reactive copper electrodes, the process at cathode is same. Copper cation, even when there is reactive copper electrodes, copper cations as well as water molecules are trying to compete, and who wins? Copper cations win. So in either cases, the product at cathode is solid copper deposited. Move on to anode, that is interesting. Move on to anode. At anode, when you have inert platinum electrodes, 2 species are competing. The anion sulfate would have migrated to anode and would turn into thiosulfate S2O8 2 minus plus 2 electrons, for which the electrode potential is 2.01 volts, which we already discussed. At the same time, water also is trying to undergo oxidation, forming oxygen gas, forming H plus ions as the byproduct with loss of 4 electrons, and E naught value for this is 1.23 volts, we know that. Now these two are the reactions at anode as long as you are using inert platinum electrodes. Whereas, apart from these two, let me number it 1, let me number it 2. Apart from reaction 1 and reaction 2, there is a third possible reaction at anode, which is that copper metal, because you have used a reactive electrode here. Here you have used inert platinum electrode, so you don't have that problem here. Here, sulfate can undergo oxidation, water can undergo oxidation, or because copper is a reactive anodic metal you have used, the copper metal used for anode also may lose 2 electrons and become copper cations and enter into solution, for which the electrode potential value is 0.34 volts as discussed already. Now, let us decide in each case which will be the feasible reaction. Here, as we discussed in previous case, 2.01, 1.23. At anode, the one with lowest potential undergoes oxidation. So, 1.23, that is, water undergoing oxidation will happen, sulfate reaction will not happen, peroxysulfate will not be formed as the product. This is fine. Now, come here. For first reaction, 2.01 volts. For second reaction, 1.23 volts. For third reaction, 0.34 volts, which is the lowest value. 2.01, 1.23, 0.34. 0.34 is the lowest value. This occurs, these two do not occur. Means, when you take reactive copper electrodes, at anode, neither sulfate nor water, the metal used for anode will be undergoing oxidation. Now let us write the net cell reactions. See here, cathodic reaction is this one, involves 2 electrons. Anodic reaction is oxidation of water, involves 4 electrons. So I might have to multiply this by 2. So write 2Cu2 plus H2O gives rise to 2Cu solid plus O2 plus 4H plus. This would be the net cell reaction, right? Then the E0 cell will be 0.34 minus 1.23. So indirectly minus 1.23 plus 0.34. So 1.23, 0.34 if you take, 13 minus 4 will be 9, 11 minus 3 will be 8, so 0.89. So minus 0.89 volts is the voltage required to perform this process. And you can notice the H plus ions are the byproduct in case of anodic oxidation, and sulfate ions which were coming from the electrolyte are remaining as such. So the byproduct you get during electrolysis of aqueous copper sulfate using platinum electrodes is sulfuric acid. So sulfuric acid is produced as a byproduct and voltage is minus 0.89 volts you are getting. Coming here, observe. Which is the feasible reaction at cathode? This one. Which is the feasible reaction at anode? This one. Add both. See, I will write cathodic reaction here. Cu2 plus 2 electrons gives rise to Cu. Cu giving rise to Cu2 plus 2 electrons will be the anodic reaction. When you add both, what happens? Cu2 plus 2 electrons gets cancelled. You will be getting copper solid giving rise to copper solid. What kind of reaction is this? Why are we even performing this? Copper giving copper. The answer will be understood much in detail in metallurgy chapter, but for the time being I will explain you. Electrolysis of copper sulfate or any silver based electrolyte with silver electrodes, copper based electrolyte with copper electrodes, say some aluminum based electrolyte with aluminum electrodes. Whenever you perform such process, you must be performing to purify this metal. This is the principle of electrolytic refining of metals, which you must have studied in your school also, if I am not wrong. Metals and non-metals chapter. And ICSE, you had a metallurgy chapter independently. There, you must have studied electrolytic refining of metals, where impure metal is taken as anode, pure metal is taken as cathode, and electrolyte will contain ions of the same metal. Same thing. Impure copper anode, pure copper cathode will be taken for copper to be deposited there, that's a different story. And electrolyte contains copper ions. Now what is happening? From impure metal, copper atoms are losing electrons and entering into solution. those copper ions gaining electrons and depositing as copper. Now, from impure, copper is coming out into the solution as ions and then reducing and depositing as metallic copper on the cathodic metal. Cathodic metal is already pure copper, its weight goes on increasing. Means I take a pure metal rod of copper with so many grams, then it keeps adding the weight to it. That's how entire anode, which was containing a lot of impurities, the impurities will remain in the anode, only copper part will become pure copper and come and deposit here. So this makes the principle for electrolytic refining. Now here, what were the various principles? Physical, the state of electrolyte also decided the products. The voltages, electrode potentials also decide the products, preferential discharge theory. Then the nature of electrodes also decide the process. So for all the factors which I explained just now, we got plenty of examples. This is what makes you understand electrolysis and product formation during electrolysis. Good and ample number of examples we have taken. Understand them, revise them once. Then you can apply it to any similar examples if given in entrance exams. For board exams, more than enough. Okay. Now let us move on to quantitative aspects. All these are qualitative ideas or qualitative aspects of electrolysis. Let us move on to quantitative aspects of electrolysis. Okay. By quantitative aspects of electrolysis, we mean how much of electricity can produce what amount of substance. How much of electricity can produce what amount of substance. Let us understand that by solving indirectly a learning exercise that is given to you. The questions were asked in the form of learning exercise. Directly I am taking it as a concept here. Okay, let us start. See, there is sodium cation needs to gain an electron and become sodium. Let us understand this is the electrode reaction, cathodic reaction. Okay, now tell me charge required to deposit one sodium atom is how much? Have you worked on it? You are absolutely right. It is 1.6022 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs. Why? Because charge on each electron is 1.6022 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs. So 1.6022 into 10 power minus 19 coulombs is required for depositing one sodium atom. Then charge required to deposit 23 grams of sodium. Why did I take exactly 23 grams of sodium? You are right. I am taking exactly 1 mole of sodium or 1 gram atom of sodium, which is 23 grams. That contains how many particles? 1 mole contains how many particles? 6.023 into 10 power 23. So each atom requires so many coulombs. So 1 mole, that is Avogadro number, would require 1.6022 into 10 power minus 19 into 6.023 into 10 power 23 coulombs, which will be equal to 96,500 coulombs, that is 1 Faraday. 1 Faraday. Already I have explained you when I was teaching you free energy change that Faraday is the special unit of charge and represents charge on 1 mole of electrons, and that will be 96,500 coulombs. Now you understood that 1 Faraday deposits 23 grams of sodium. Point noted. 1 Faraday deposits 23 grams of sodium. Okay. Now let us take magnesium. Magnesium is bivalent, exists as magnesium 2 plus ion, gains 2 electrons and becomes magnesium, for example. Then tell me, to deposit 24 grams of magnesium, because 1 mole of magnesium is nothing but 24 grams. To deposit 24 grams of magnesium, how much charge would you need? If there is 1 electron, 1 mole requires 1 mole of electrons, that means 1 Faraday. Here 1 mole of magnesium requires 2 moles of electrons, that's why it will be 2 Faraday. So you can understand 2 Faraday deposits 24 grams of magnesium. Therefore, 1 Faraday deposits 12 grams of magnesium. Okay? Next, let me take aluminium. Aluminium is trivalent, exists as Al3 plus, so needs to gain 3 electrons and form aluminium. Now tell me, how many Faraday are required to deposit exactly 27 grams of aluminium, which is 1 mole? You are right, 3 Faraday, because 3 moles of electrons are required for 1 mole of aluminium. So 3 Faraday deposits 27 grams of aluminium. Therefore, 1 Faraday deposits, you are right, 9 grams of aluminium. Now you observe carefully. 1 Faraday deposits 23 grams of sodium, which is 23 by 1, I can say. 1 Faraday deposits 12 grams of magnesium, which is 24 by 2, that is atomic mass by 2. And here 1 Faraday deposits 9 grams of aluminium, which is its atomic mass by 3. Now, what are 1, 2 and 3 for sodium, magnesium and aluminium respectively? They are their valencies. Now, atomic mass of sodium by its valency, many grams of sodium is deposited by 1 Faraday. Atomic mass of magnesium by its valency, many grams of magnesium is deposited by 1 Faraday. Atomic mass of aluminium by its valency, many grams of aluminium is deposited by 1 Faraday. So, 1 Faraday deposits atomic mass divided by valency much of that substance. Each Faraday of electricity deposits atomic mass divided by valency much of that substance. And what do you call the quantity atomic mass divided by its valency? Nothing but equivalent mass. Atomic mass by valency is nothing but equivalent mass. So conclusion, when you pass electricity, whether it is a cathodic reaction or it is an anodic reaction, please understand that. Whether it is a cathodic reaction or it is an anodic reaction, 1 Faraday deposits or liberates exactly equivalent mass of that substance. I repeat, 1 Faraday deposits or liberates exactly equivalent mass of that substance. That is the important quantitative relation that we have arrived at. 1 Faraday deposits or liberates equivalent mass of that substance. Now, we took 3 examples of metals and understood this. Let us apply the same to 3 non-metallic gases, where I would like to establish one more point. Okay, let's proceed. Let us understand non-metals and their quantitative aspects. Say I'll start with hydrogen gas. Say 2 H plus ions gain 2 electrons to form 1 mole of hydrogen gas, let us assume. Please understand, equivalent mass is atomic mass divided by valency. Now, 2 hydrogens gaining 2 electrons, but each atom is gaining 1 electron. So its valency here is 1. Now, as you can understand, 1 Faraday deposits 1 by 1 grams of hydrogen. That is 1 gram of hydrogen. Why? Atomic mass is 1 and valency also is 1. So 1 Faraday deposits 1 gram of hydrogen. And by the way, hydrogen is a gas, you know that. Similarly, suppose I take chlorine. Chloride ion generally undergoes oxidation. Hydrogen gas is produced by reduction, but chlorine gas is produced by oxidation. So chloride ions, 2 chloride ions lose 2 electrons and become chlorine gas, for example. Here also please observe, what is the valency of chlorine? 1. Because chlorine is a molecular gas, because 2 chloride ions have to produce, we have written 2 chloride and 2 electrons here. But each chloride, the atoms, please understand, valency is number of electrons lost or gained by each atom of that species. Number of electrons lost or gained by each atom of that species. So each atom of chlorine is losing only 1 electron. That's why its valency is 1. That's why 1 Faraday deposits 35.5 by 1, that is 35.5 grams of chlorine gas. Okay. Similarly, oxygen, let me take. Oxide exists as O minus 2, so we'll have to lose 2 electrons to become oxygen atom. But oxygen gas is liberated as O2, so you would need 2 moles of O minus 2, that's why it will be 4 electrons. Reaction may have 4 electrons, but what do you mean by valency? As I told, valency is number of electrons lost or gained by each atom. So each oxide is losing only 2 electrons, so its valency is 2. Therefore, 1 Faraday deposits, its atomic mass is 16. 16 by 2, that is 8 grams of oxygen gas. So please understand, equivalent mass of hydrogen will be 1, equivalent mass of chlorine will be 35.5, equivalent mass of oxygen will be 8. So 1 Faraday, I'm sorry for using the word deposits everywhere, I should call it liberates, because it's a gas, you know. I should have called it liberates. Okay. Right. So 1 Faraday liberates 1 gram of hydrogen gas, 1 Faraday liberates 35.5 grams of chlorine gas, 1 Faraday liberates 8 grams of oxygen gas. Now, because they are gases, apart from their equivalent mass, we should talk about their equivalent volume also. Yes or no? And you have a standard value for volume of gases at STP. How much is that? Exactly right, 22.4 liters. Now, molecular mass of a gas occupies 22.4 liters. I repeat, molecular mass of a gas occupies 22.4 liters. Here, what is the molecular mass of hydrogen gas? 2. So 2 grams occupies 22.4 liters. So 1 gram must occupy 11.2 liters. So I can say 1 Faraday liberates 11.2 liters of hydrogen at STP, which will be called as its equivalent volume. So in terms of volume, 1 Faraday liberates equivalent volume of that gas. In terms of mass, 1 Faraday liberates equivalent mass of that gas, either ways. So 1 Faraday liberates how much of hydrogen gas? 11.2 liters or 11,200 milliliters. Moving on. Again, 1 mole of chlorine or molecular mass of chlorine is how much? 71 grams. 71 grams occupies how many liters? 22.4 liters. But here 1 Faraday is liberating how much? 35.5 grams. 35.5 grams means again it will be 11.2 liters of chlorine gas at STP. So equivalent volume of chlorine will be 11.2 because its equivalent mass is 35.5 but its molecular mass is 71. 71 grams occupies 22.4 liters, so 35.5 grams occupies 11.2 liters. So indirectly 1 Faraday liberates during electrolysis 11.2 liters of chlorine gas at STP. Why I am discussing this is, examiner need not ask you only masses. He will say so many Faradays is supplied, how many liters of that gas may be produced, how many milliliters of that gas may be produced. That's why. Moving on. Molecular mass of oxygen gas is 32 grams, you know that. Whereas equivalent mass, how much we got? 8 grams. 32 grams occupies 22.4 liters. So 8 grams would occupy 5.6 liters. Therefore, you can say 1 Faraday liberates 5.6 liters of oxygen at STP because equivalent volume of oxygen would be 5.6 because its valency is 2. Equivalent volume of chlorine will be 11.2, valency is 1. Equivalent volume of hydrogen also would be 11.2, valency is 1. These three are the most commonly asked gases, that's why I have discussed. So 1 Faraday deposits or liberates equivalent mass or equivalent volume of that substance. Volume is applicable only for gases. Is that clear? That is quantitative aspects of electrolysis. Now, we have, with the fundamental knowledge we had and the logics we know, we have applied them and understood the quantitative aspects. In this quantitative aspect, what did you understand? 1 Faraday, if I supply, 1 equivalent will be deposited or liberated. If I supply 2 Faraday, 2 equivalents will be deposited or liberated. If I supply 3 Faraday, 3 equivalents will be deposited or liberated. If I supply half Faraday, half equivalent will be deposited or liberated. If I supply 0.1 Faraday, 0.1 equivalents will be deposited or liberated. Conclusion is, more the Faradays you supply, more the substance deposited or liberated. That means the amount of substance deposited or liberated during electrolysis is directly proportional to the quantity of electricity is passed. Means how much ever you supply, so much only it gets deposited or liberated. Don't expect anything else, because you know you are conducting a non-spontaneous reaction. What is a non-spontaneous reaction? Occurs or proceeds only when there is continuous supply of external agent. Who is the external agent here? Electricity. So the quantity of electricity you supply and the amount getting electrolyzed will be directly proportional. Don't expect supply small amount and undergo indefinite electrolysis. This quantitative relation was derived or arrived or studied for the first time by a scientist, Michael Faraday. He is popular to you for his electromagnetic induction learnt in your school, but he is also very much popular in chemistry for demonstrating electrolysis for the first time to this world. You don't believe me? By demonstrating electrolysis for the first time to this world, this guy Michael Faraday gave rise to the doubt in the minds of people that there are electrons. The atoms are not neutral. Remember the beginning of atomic structure, 1828. Until when people went on believing that atom is the smallest particle of matter, you don't have anything. The whole universe present inside the atom, which we studied as structure of atom in first year, and you will be studying as atoms and nuclei in detail in second year physics. That whole thing was initiated by demonstration of electrolysis by Michael Faraday. How? When he demonstrated that by passing electricity, a substance can be decomposed, people got a doubt. When you are passing electricity, substance is taking and getting decomposed. That means it is having charge carriers. But if atoms are the smallest particles, we know already that atoms are electrically neutral, then how can neutral particles called atoms carry charge? That means matter must be possessing some charged particles. That gave rise to the doubt of the existence of electrons inside the atom. So, demonstration of electrolysis by Michael Faraday is historical, please understand that. And he is the one for the first time, apart from demonstrating electrolysis, gave quantitative relation between amount of electricity supplied and the substance deposited in the form of two laws called Faraday's laws of electrolysis. Let us discuss the Faraday's laws of electrolysis now. Let us start off with Faraday's first law of electrolysis. It says that the amount of substance deposited or liberated at any given electrode. Means, please understand, amount of substance deposited if it is solid, liberated if it is gas, at any given electrode. That means formed due to reduction if it is cathode, formed due to oxidation if it is anode. At any given electrode is directly proportional to the quantity of electricity passed. Quantity of electricity passed. We have already established it. Just now we understood 1 Faraday you supply 1 equivalent deposit, 2 Faraday you supply 2 equivalent deposits, so it's directly proportional to quantity of electricity passed, which can be mathematically expressed as W is proportional to Q, where W represents the weight of substance, Q represents the charge passed. You know very well charge is equal to current into time, so I can write W is proportional to I into T. To remove proportionality, we introduce a constant value called Z, which is called ECE, means electrochemical equivalence. What is Z? Electrochemical equivalence. So, the mathematical expression for Faraday's first law is W is equal to ZIT. Now, if current and time are given and I have to find out how much of substance will be deposited or liberated, I have one more parameter needed, right? Z. How do we get the value of Z? And how do we define Z? Let us understand that. Say 1 ampere current is passed for 1 second. Then Z will be equal to W, right? 1 ampere current is passed for 1 second. Z will be equal to W, right? Now define Z. Electrochemical equivalency is nothing but the weight of substance deposited or liberated at any given electrode when exactly 1 ampere current is passed for 1 second. What do you mean by 1 ampere current for 1 second? Nothing but 1 coulomb charge. So, electrochemical equivalency is the weight of substance deposited when exactly 1 coulomb charge is passed. Now, just now we understood, let's understand how to calculate value of Z. Just now we understood that 1 Faraday deposits or liberates E grams, where E means the equivalent mass. 1 Faraday deposits or liberates E grams, therefore 1 Faraday is nothing but 96,500 coulombs, right? So 1 Faraday, which means 96,500 coulombs, deposits or liberates E grams. Therefore 1 coulomb deposits or liberates E by 96,500. And just now we defined that Z is the weight of substance deposited or liberated by 1 coulomb. 1 coulomb is liberating or depositing how much? E by 96,500. So Z is equal to E by 96,500. So finally you can say W is equal to E into I into T by 96,500 if you substitute the value of Z also. That is the statement and mathematical expression for Faraday's first law, which you can solve with directly using this formula or using the previous statement we said. 1 Faraday deposits equivalent mass. So convert the given values of current and time into number of coulombs. So 96,500 coulombs deposits so much. So given number of coulombs deposits how much? Every time using that unitary method also you can do it. That is Faraday's first law. Very simple and very easy. Now Faraday's second law. What does it say? Assume. Say there are two electrolytic cells. In one of them I am electrolyzing copper sulfate solution. In the other one I am electrolyzing silver nitrate solution, for example. And they are connected in series, for example. Cathode, anode, cathode, anode. They are connected in series to the same battery. Now you see, at this cathode copper gets deposited, at this cathode silver gets deposited. Right, because both copper and silver have more potential than water. That's why in aqueous solution of copper, at cathode copper will be deposited. In aqueous solution of silver nitrate, at cathode silver will be deposited. Now the question is, when two electrolytic cells are connected in series and same quantity of electricity is passed through them, then ratio of weights of substances deposited at respective cathodes means in both cases you should compare both cathodes or you should compare both anodes. The ratio of the elements deposited or liberated at a given electrode is equal to the ratio of their equivalent masses. You know atomic mass of copper is 64 and it exists as Cu2 plus in copper sulfate, so its valency is 2, so its equivalent mass will be 64 by 2, that is 32. Atomic mass of silver is 108 and in silver nitrate it exists as Ag plus, so its equivalent mass will be 108 by 1, that is 108. Now ratio of weights of copper and silver is equal to 32 by 108. Now if you know weight of any one of them, you can tell the weight of the other. So it's very simple. There is nothing to twist, there is nothing to trouble. Actually problems based on Faraday's laws are very easy. So, according to Faraday's second law of electrolysis, ratio of, I'll describe the statement. When two electrolytic solutions are connected in series and same quantity of electricity is passed through two electrolytic solutions connected in series, the ratio of weights of substances deposited at respective electrodes is equal to the ratio of their equivalent masses. That is Faraday's second law of electrolysis, which also proves that weights are proportional to equivalent masses. Okay, clear? So these are Faraday's laws of electrolysis. Let us solve the numerical problems based on Faraday's laws in the next session. And based on the time available, we will move on to applications also. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following. Please practice all the examples of electrolysis and please practice the statement and mathematical formula of both Faraday's laws. See you later. Thank you.